Hi, and welcome to the Hotline, your online hotline direct line to the women-only attorneys at Hofheimer Family Law. My name is Katie Carter, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm an attorney at Hofheimer Family Law, a Virginia-based family law firm dedicated to representing women exclusively in divorce, custody, and support cases. And I'm here today with Sheera Herrell, an attorney in our office. She's represented women exclusively in family law cases for over 20 years now, so I know she has a lot of wisdom to impart. Thank you, Sheera, for joining me today. Although, honestly, I
Oh,
feel like
thanks for
I,
having me, Katie.
I can't take credit for this one. This one was your idea. This is a topic that you wanted to talk about. And specifically, today we're going to be talking about what happens in cases when we as attorneys have to give advice to our clients that they maybe don't want to hear. So it's a challenging
Mm.
topic, both, I mean, on our part, in the sense that we don't want to come off like, we're all knowing and just ready to, tell you exactly what to do with some of the most intimate details of your life. So we're going to try and tackle this topic and hopefully give you some insight into why we do what we do and hopefully build a bridge between attorneys and clients so that you can um, make the best decisions possible for you in your case. So I think, Sheera, probably the
Right.
best way to start this conversation is to anchor it in some examples. Can you give us an example of a type of advice that you might give a client that they might not want to hear?
Mm. Well, if we talk about custody first, sometimes it's hard for a historically stay-at-home mom to hear that dad's going to get more likely than not more than every other weekend. And every other weekend type of parenting schedule is really from years and years ago when I first started practicing back in 1999. That was maybe more of the standard. But I would say in the last 15 years ish or so, it's really more of a shared. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a 50-50, but it can be really hard for a stay at home mom to hear this news of, oh my gosh, what do you
Yeah.
mean he's going to get, let's say, half the time? But that happens because just our culture has changed in this
Mhm.
area. And the mindset of the judges really has changed. It's so that can be really hard. And the thing I want to say about that is if you find yourself in a situation like that, it really truly has nothing to do with the quality of your mothering, nothing at all. You could literally be won an award for,
Right.
mother of the year. You really
Yeah.
could. There could be really nothing that anyone can criticize you on your parenting skills because that's not what the criteria. It's not that a court has to find that you're unfit to award shared custody. It just has to find that it's in the best interest of the children. And
Yeah.
even a dad who really hasn't stepped up and, oh my gosh, does this happen all the time? Well, my husband never did anything with the kids and he doesn't know who the doctors are or taken them anywhere. But we separated and oh my gosh, now he's involved in everything. And that happens really more often than not. So that's hard. And I get that. I'm a mom, you're a mom.
Yeah.
We want to be with our kids, but that's something to really think about as someone as a mom goes through this process, that it's not an insult to your mothering or a
No.
criticism on your mothering. It's really, you can't do the, what is it, King Solomon, divide the baby in half,
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
courts
Literally not
have
possible.
to. Right. The courts make the best judgment on the limited information, or you and the father make a decision based on the facts that are known. And sometimes that's a schedule that y- you wouldn't have originally thought of, but that can be a hard thing.
Yeah, I can think of a couple different categories. I mean, I would say things like, maybe you can't afford to keep the house, or maybe
Mm,
it's not time to date, or you shouldn't be dating the guy that you're trying to date. I can think about, spousal support. Maybe you're either going to have to pay it if you're the higher wage earner, or if he's the higher wage earner, that you may not receive as much spousal support as you think you should. But I would say that the commonality that all of these things have is, like Shira was saying with the custody example, it's not an when you get bad advice, it's not necessarily a reflection that you've made poor decisions. It's just the court is looking for specific things. And you have to kind of arrange your life in a way that makes sense to the court, that allows them to, award you as much support as possible, that allows puts you in a position to hopefully keep the home or have more parenting time. But even if you don't prevail on those things, or even if you're hearing things that you don't want to hear, it's not because, we want to tell you that, or we're trying to like rain on your parade or make life harder for you. It's just,
Right, right,
it's a function of what the court is looking at.
right. And I think that I would modify the term of bad advice. I don't think that has a different connotation to it. I think
Mm,
it's advice that we don't want to hear because
right.
sometimes there's just information we don't want to hear. I don't want to be told certain things. I'm a human. I mean, you're
Yeah.
a human. We
Yeah.
hear things all the time we don't want to do. So it's hard to hear this information. And I think it's human nature that when you hear something you don't want to hear, that you construe that as bad advice, that my lawyer's
Yeah.
not fighting for me because she's telling me that I can't afford my house, or it's going to be a shared schedule, or I have to split my retirement. And the things that lawyers tell clients in meetings one on one, that lawyers act differently in one-on-one meetings with clients than they do in the courtroom or in a settlement conference, because I have to tell the client the good, the bad, the ugly, as
Yeah.
Charlie
Shoot them
Hofheimer likes
straight.
to say. You have to know it all. Yes. So I want to prepare you for your worst case and what the best case is. And generally speaking, it's somewhere in the middle. Sometimes not. Sometimes it is the worst case, and sometimes it is the best case. You just never know. But it is hard. So the takeaway I think that I would want to give from this is, just because you hear something you don't want to hear doesn't necessarily make it bad advice. And I typically, when a client feels that way, I'll say, look, go get a second opinion, because I'm
Yeah.
not the only divorce attorney in town. And if someone else gives you a different answer based on the facts that you've given them, then maybe that person's a better fit for you. But I think more often than not, the divorce attorneys who do this work, um, consistently, or the majority of the time, because that's all that we do, generally give the same advice.
Yeah, yeah, that's perfectly answers my next question, which was
Oh,
specifically what advice, yeah, what advice do you have for a woman who's getting or is about to get advice that maybe she doesn't want to hear? And,
mm.
like you said, a second opinion is a great idea. Did you have any other things to add? Any other advice that you would give someone who's gotten not bad advice, but advice that she didn't want?
It's just, yeah, advice hard to hear. Well, I would say initially, if you think that you're going to have a contested divorce with your husband, I would suggest meeting with two, three, four different divorce attorneys to see who you gel with,
Yeah.
because you will be going on a journey with this person and you're going to
Mhm.
need to trust this person. And to the extent that you can meet with them in person, my preference is always in person, because I like that connection with people, because I feel it helps when times get tough that we can look each other in the eyes of, you know,
Yeah.
this is what needs to happen. Big
Yeah.
decisions need to be made. So I think I tell clients, gather the data. So gather the data on the attorney that you're going to work with. And I think it's a good investment to meet with two or three attorneys. And if in the course of the representation, you have a gut feeling that things are not going well with your attorney, absolutely get a second
Yes.
opinion. It's
Yes.
okay to switch attorneys mid case. It's not really good to do that more than once.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
not
two
right before
attorneys in a divorce
trial.
case, no one's really going to think twice of it. Sometimes people just don't gel well. They have a short consult and they want to switch, but I would limit it to two, because then the judges are thinking, why aren't you getting along with these,
Anybody.
all of these attorneys?
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that's important. I think it's important to remember too that, we nobody knows each other very well in these situations. A lot of times you hire an attorney on the strength of one
Hmm.
meeting, one consultation. And so when you then turn around and in the next two or three meetings, you hear something where you're like, wait, like that doesn't sound right, that doesn't feel right, that doesn't, like, my heart is telling me that this isn't right for me. It's especially important to ask questions
Right.
both of your current attorney and of anyone that you might have, get a second opinion with, just because, we really
Hmm.
need to be of one mind. It's not a problem that you don't accept that advice immediately or that you have questions. It's a problem if
Sure. Right.
we can't talk it through and kind of figure out how to move forward. What I see with a lot of the women who are the most angry about advice that they maybe didn't want to get is that then they either lie to us and tell us that they did something that they didn't, or they just generally ignore our advice, which then, we end up going to trial and
Mm,
not being in full possession of the facts or thinking something happened that didn't, it puts us
hmm.
in a worse position. So the ideal situation would be like really talk through it with your current attorney, with an attorney that you might meet with for a second opinion, and come to some sort of decision. But find a way to be open and honest with your attorney about exactly what's happening so that they can represent you as well as possible, because these are definitely difficult times. You're going through a lot. You're under a lot of stress. We're not
Oh,
going to be
yes.
offended.
Hmm.
It's not like I'm upset when somebody's like, wait, 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 like rewind, like let me ask some questions because like what you're saying sounds wrong to me. That's fine. Like challenge me. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to explain where I'm coming from, but I'm not really happy when somebody lies to me or when I don't know something. Like that just makes it
Oh,
even
no.
harder.
There's no judgment when it comes to honesty. I'm not
Yeah.
here to make judgments on anybody, but I make
Yeah.
a judgment if you lie to me,
Yeah.
especially when we find out at trial these things that are proven that, 'cause that's a big problem because that just hurts the client. And I want to help somebody. I don't want to put them in a worse situation. So
Yeah,
to be as
absolutely.
honest as possible, absolutely, because I want to craft something that you can move on from this chapter in your life as efficiently and effectively as possible, for sure.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
okay. No one's perfect. Everyone has skeletons in the closet. No one's an angel. We're all
Yeah.
humans. We're all flawed, and that's okay. That's
Yeah, and it's
okay.
not fair. We get to know about yours and you don't get to know about our skeletons, right? Like so it just
Yeah.
feels
Right.
that
Right.
feels weird. It's a delicate balance in terms of a relationship. But I do think that, good relationships between attorney and client are just absolutely critical, and taking whatever steps you can to make sure that you and your attorney are on the same page is going to be time that is
Right.
very well spent. What would you
Right.
say, Sheera, to a client, whether it's your client or someone else's client, maybe coming to you for a second opinion, who's gotten advice that she doesn't trust? What would you tell her to do?
Well, typically in that situation, I'll ask a lot of questions about the facts and what has happened in the case and what the orders are, if there are any agreements signed.
Hmm.
And I'll either let them know this is the data or the information I would need to give further advice, or if there is sufficient information and data, then I would give the advice based on what is before me. But I try to process different options with people because generally it's not a one or nothing. It's there are multiple options and creative ways
Right.
to reach a resolution. And that's the great thing about settlement. It can be as creative as the two people who sign the agreement. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing.
Yeah.
And generally, divorces are not all or nothing. And if both sides can see the benefit of reaching a resolution, and I know sometimes you may think that the other side, well, they never want to settle. Well, I would challenge that because just to see what are there creative solutions that maybe the current attorney hasn't thought of. I
Yeah.
try to brainstorm those types of things.
I think that's always time well spent. Yeah, I mean nobody wants to go all the way through to a trial. It's just too unpredictable, too volatile, too damaging even to the relationships between the parties if they have to continue to co-parent together after the divorce is
Hmm.
finalized. So even for the client, like for the attorney, coming up with those solutions is really helpful. But for the client, I think it's really
Hmm.
helpful to like process your feelings and come up with goals and be able to come in not just
Hmm.
angry about what's happened, but to be able to articulate where you want this to end up and how you want it to look and feel. And so then we can kind of work backwards from that point to craft
Exactly.
a solution that could work.
Right.
I mean, not that it would be necessarily your very most ideal, but at least it's going to get you where you want to go in the end. And I think most people would say, like, he's a jerk and I hate him. And I'm glad we're getting a divorce, but I still want to co parent. I want us both to be able to come together for, weddings and baptisms and all of whatever events that you guys are going to share as a
Right.
family, both now and in the future, and not have it be awful. Like we want to co-parent and
Right.
be on the same page and send the kids back and
Right.
forth without overwhelming tension. So how do we get there? Like what does that look like, and how do we
Right.
take where we are now and build on that so that it's something healthier and happier and more productive for everybody involved?
Right. At least civil.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like so maybe smaller goals.
That's my baseline.
Yeah,
Just right. Just
yeah, yeah.
civil.
My goals are getting a little
Um,
too lofty there.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we're not looking to be best friends here, but it's
right.
really so that the kids don't feel the tension. And
Yeah.
maybe that's not possible. Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But it's a goal.
It is. It's a good goal. It's a good goal. And your
Right.
attorney
Right.
is your partner in helping you get there. I know sometimes one of the things you were raising with me, Shira, before this conversation was just that when you have to have these conversations, the difficult conversations where you give advice that the client doesn't want to hear, sometimes they turn around and say things like, "You're just not fighting for me. You are on husband's side, or you're just, working through with your buddy, the attorney on the other side." And those allegations, while like understandable because you're coming from a place of stress and fear, are not true. They're not true.
Sure.
We have an ethical duty. I mean, I don't know what else you would want to add about that, Shira, but we're not trying to do that.
Right. Well, gosh, it's such an anxiety provoking situation. It's very scary. Totally
Mhm.
understand that. But I don't know any attorney that's going to collude with the husband or the other attorney to screw over their client.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
Forgive my language, because attorneys have law licenses, and that's how we spend a lot of money to get a law license, and this is what we
Yeah.
do. And I always want to do what's best for the client. It's just I'm an advocate, and I
Yeah.
have one person that is 100% loyalty to, and that loyalty includes telling you what you don't want to hear,
Yeah.
because you have to hear that to make the best decision. But I can't think of any circumstance where an attorney would do something that would, jeopardize their client, because that's not why lawyers are lawyers.
No, no,
Um,
absolutely not.
Especially, I think, especially in family law, because family law that's a tough topic. It's a tough, practice, and people generally who do exclusively family law really want to help people. I mean, that's
Yeah.
people say to me, "Gosh, how can you be a divorce attorney for what is it now, 24 years?"
Yeah.
Well, I actually like helping people, because this is really one of the worst times of your lives, and it's satisfying to me to see someone end this chapter as best they can and move on with their life. And I love, love, love when I have this one client from many years ago, and every year she sends me a Christmas card with a
Oh,
picture of her family with her daughter, and I love seeing it. I look forward to that Christmas card every year. And I have other clients send notes and just updates. And I love hearing from these women.
yeah.
So that
Yeah. I,
part,
s- I feel like
it's
I
very
say that all the
satisfying.
time. It is. It is. It's one of the
Yeah.
most real ways to help a person and by extension their entire family in one of
Right.
the worst parts of their lives. I don't think there's
Oh,
very many other types of law that touch people's lives in such a real way. And it's
right.
it's empowering for me to see that the woman at the end of the case, when we get that divorce decree entered, is so different from the woman who sat in my office probably crying at the very beginning of our acquaintance with each other.
Right.
And like that's
Right.
that's what I like, is to see the arc of strength, them coming from this
Yes.
position of
Right.
being, depressed and sad and not seeing a way forward to, like, a bright new future ahead of them, and the ability to make all
Right.
sorts of different choices moving forward, to be able to find, I say, happily ever after. I know it's a different kind of happily ever after than most people envision, but anyone who's been in a bad marriage knows that, being able to end it and walk away, I mean, it is a happily ever after. It's a chance for a whole do-over. So,
Sure. Sure.
and
Sure.
sometimes,
It's from
you know,
anxiety to empowerment. Hmm.
yes, yes. And sometimes getting that advice that you don't want to hear is, one of the bumps in the road on the way forward. And once
Hmm.
you have either accepted it or worked to address it, like if it's maybe a criticism of something that you've done in a way that you can overcome it, you're going to be stronger and you're going to have a better foundation for the future. So, and like Shira said, I mean,
Right.
I think you said it best at the beginning, Shira. Like, you're just here to help. Like, you want to help. And I feel like that's a
Right.
common thread in all the conversations that I've had with you over the years we've worked together. It's, just because a
Hmm.
situation isn't perfect doesn't mean you can't help. So being able to see your attorney for who she is and that she's trying to help, and have these difficult conversations, even if your initial reaction is like, whoa, like, I don't like that. That doesn't feel right to me. But
Hmm.
just being able to work through that and have those conversations is going to make your attorney client relationship stronger, which ultimately I think really impacts the outcome of your case.
Hmm.
It's going to make the end result better.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Sheera. I hope this conversation was really helpful for a lot of
All right.
people listening in. Thank you so much again for joining us. If you need access to any more information, please feel free to visit our website at www.hoflaw. That's HOFLAW.com. We have 4 free books, a ton of free resources, and information about how to schedule a consultation, whether you want to have an initial consultation or get a second opinion if you're, not happy with your current attorney, just so that you can figure out the best way for you to move forward. We're definitely here for you. So again, thanks, Sheera, and thanks so much to everyone for tuning in.